working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila and Vietnam. Hello, Eliana.
Hello, I'm Eliana Faith Sebastian from EBC Vietnam Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
Thanks. At least 24 people have been killed in landslides and flooding across central and southern Philippines after Tropical Storm Maggie, or Agaton, dumped heavy rains and disrupted travel ahead of the Catholic Easter holidays.
Overseas voting in Thailand begins.
In Phuket, in which our kababayan also.
President Duterte and Chinese President Xi Jinping have expressed hope for a peaceful settlement of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
During a video address to the South Korean parliament, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that he believes tens of thousands of people in Mariupol have been killed, as he asked lawmakers to provide military assistance.
First in our news, flooding has been affecting portions of western Visayas due to rains brought by Tropical Storm Agaton, or international name Maggie. At least 24 people have been killed in landslides and flooding across central and southern Philippines, according to authorities today, after Tropical Storm Maggie dumped heavy rains and disrupted travel ahead of the Easter holidays. More than 13,000 people fled to emergency shelters as the storm pounded the region, according to the National Disaster Agency, flooding houses, inundating fields, cutting off roads, and knocking out power. Baybay City Disaster Officer Rice Austero said the central province of Leyte was among the hardest hit, with landslides leaving 21 people dead in 4 villages. The National Disaster Agency said Leyte's death toll adds to another 3 people killed on the main southern island of Mindanao. Photos posted on Facebook and verified by AFP showed several houses buried in mud up to the rooftops in Bunga, one of the affected villages in Leyte. Baybay City Council Mayor Mark Unlukay said he feared the death toll could rise after receiving reports that other villages had also been inundated by the waves of earth and mud. Philippine Coast Guard and police personnel rescued people from their homes in the flooded town of Abuyog, carrying residents onto orange stretchers laid on floating boats. Tropical Storm Maggie, known in the Philippines by its local name Agaton, is the first major storm to hit the disaster-prone country this year. Whipping seas, it forced dozens of ports to suspend operations and stranded nearly 6,000 people at the start of one of the busiest travel periods of the year this holiday season. The storm comes 4 months after a super typhoon devastated swathes of the archipelago nation, killing more than 400 people, leaving hundreds of thousands homeless. Rai, the strongest typhoon to hit the Philippines last year, intensified faster than expected, according to officials, and scientists have long warned that typhoons are strengthening more rapidly as the world becomes warmer because of human-driven climate change. The Philippines, ranked among the most vulnerable nations to its impacts, is hit by an average of 20 storms every year. In 2013, Typhoon Haiyan was the strongest storm ever to have made landfall, leaving over 7,300 people dead or missing. While Pagasa also said Tropical Storm or Tropical Depression Agaton has maintained its strength as it continues to meander in the vicinity of Samar Leyte in the next 6 to 12 hours before it moves towards the Philippine Sea tonight or tomorrow morning. Again, let's listen in.
ngayon ay meron pa rin po tayo nakataas na tropical cyclone wind signal number 1. Sa bahagi po yan ng southern portion ng Masbate, partikular na po yan sa Dimasalang, sa Kawayan, sa Palanas, sa Placer, sa Kataingan, sa Esperanza, maging sa POV Corpus at sa bahagi din po ng Visayas, partikular na po yan sa Eastern Samar, Northern Samar, sa Biliran, sa Leyte, sa Southern Leyte, sa northeastern portion po ng Cebu, kasama na dyan ang Camotes Islands, partikular na po yan sa Daan Bantayan, sa Medellin, sa City of Bogo, sa Tabogon, Borbon at sa Sogod, at meron din po tayong nakataas na tropical cyclone wind signal number 1 sa bahagi po ng Dinagat Island.
Light to moderate with at times heavy rains will be experienced over Mimaropa region, Dinagat Island, Zamboanga del Norte, Quezon, and the rest of the Visayas region. Scattered to widespread flooding, rain-induced landslides are likely, especially in areas highly susceptible to these hazards. Agaton packs maximum sustained winds of 45 kilometers per hour near the center and gustiness of up to 75 kilometers per hour slowly moving eastward. Strong breeze to near gale conditions and rough seas will prevail in these areas, according to Pagasa. And with these, mariners of small sea vessels are advised to remain in port or take shelter. And those operating larger vessels are likewise advised to take precautionary measures when venturing out to the sea. Moderate to rough seas will prevail over the remaining seaboards of the country that are not under any wind signal or gale warning, especially over the northern and eastern seaboards of Luzon and the eastern seaboards of the Visayas and Mindanao. And these conditions may be risky for those using small seacraft, or so mariners are advised to take precautionary measures.
A Dutch teenager was killed when a group he was diving with off Malaysia's coast went missing, officials said Saturday, following the dramatic rescue of his father and 2 others. Police earlier said the search for the boy had been called off after they concluded he had floated into Indonesian waters, and they had informed their counterparts in the archipelago nation.
Found out that they were actually rescued further up north, that is about 16 nautical miles north Pulau Bintan, which is in Indonesian's water. So based on that information, we decided to stop the search and rescue in Malaysian waters, and we have informed the Indonesian parties to continue the search and rescue operation in that area.
The 3 Europeans and their instructor got into trouble Wednesday after they surfaced from a dive near a southern island but could not find their boat. A British man, 46-year-old Adrian Chesters, and French woman Alexia Molina, 18, were discovered by fishermen in the waters of neighboring Indonesia, picked up by marine police and taken back to Malaysia. But Chesters told officials that his son, 14-year-old Nathan, who holds Dutch citizenship, had died. The teen, as a result of being too weak, was unable to survive, a Coast Guard statement said, citing the father. Chesters was a part of a group who got into trouble Wednesday after an ill-fated diving trip, drifting many kilometers away from their place of disappearance. The other 3 have since been rescued. While he urged Filipinos to continue adhering to minimum public health protocols, President Duterte said he is not keen on ditching the requirement of wearing face masks until his term ends.
There's a distinct possibility that there will be another surge. Maybe not the COVID-19, the original, we have met the challenge with the vaccination. But itong mga variants, and we do not know if the variants would really be powerful or weak. Pero itong Omicron something X, o may code number, hindi ko naman minimemorize yun. It's seems to be appearing in the horizon again. It is really important. We are not out of the woods actually. We are still in a bind because kung pagka ganito na mag-surge na naman tayo, we have so many crowds lately, religious, political, at makita mo dikit-dikit yung tao. And the medical experts or the doctors even are really worried about the closeness of human beings with each other. I mean physical.
Despite a decline in the number of new COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations in the country, Duterte reiterated the need for the unvaccinated to avail of jabs to protect the body. Duterte cited the need to wear face masks as it reduces the chance of spreading the disease amid the election-related and religious activities that entail the crowding of people.
Meanwhile, a new COVID-19 variant has been identified in the United Kingdom. This variant, known as XE, is a hybrid two now familiar strains of Omicron, which is the BA1, the original Omicron strain, and the BA2, the more infectious related strain that is now dominant in the United States and other countries. WHO COVID-19 technical lead Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove explains that it is and how to protect ourselves from it. Take a look.
So it has many sublineages. You've heard of BA.1 and BA.2. We now have a recombinant of both BA.1 and BA.2, and this is being called XE. This is how the scientists classify this when they're doing their molecular epidemiology and actually tracking the changes of these variants. So XE is being classified under Omicron, and it's a combination of BA.1 and BA.2. Here's what we know about the transmissibility of this recombinant of BA.1 and BA.2. Based on an initial analysis of available sequences, there's a slight growth advantage of this recombinant over BA.2, about a 10% increase in transmissibility, not 10 times as has been reported by some. But we are analyzing this with all available information that we have, and we will continue to do so. The analysis will be ongoing, as we do with all variants. And again, this recombinant is classified under Omicron. So as information becomes available, we will update you as quickly as possible. This virus is still with us. It's circulating at a really intense level. And we need to use all of the tools that we have at our disposal. These tools are vaccines and, more importantly, vaccination. And we need to make sure that when it's your turn that you get vaccinated and you receive the full course of the doses that you need. And we need to critically ensure that those around the world, particularly those who are most vulnerable, people who are of older age, people who have underlying conditions, and our frontline workers get vaccinated in every single country. And we need to also follow other measures. Physical distancing, wearing of a mask, avoiding crowded spaces, opening the windows and doors when you're inside, staying home if you're unwell. All of these tools continue to work against reducing the spread as well as preventing severe disease and death. But vaccinations remain critically important and are incredibly effective at preventing severe disease and death. So get vaccinated when it's your turn.
Meanwhile, the city of Shanghai is under lockdown as COVID cases continue to increase in the Chinese financial capital. And that led the United States to issue an advisory ordering all non-essential employees at its Shanghai consulate to leave. They voiced concerns for the safety of Americans in China as the government enforces hard lockdowns to contain COVID-19. The U.S. Embassy said last week it would permit non-essential employees to leave its Shanghai consulate due to the case surge, warning citizens in China that they may face arbitrary enforcement of virus curbs. And patience is also wearing wearing thin. Complaints of food shortages, the conditions of isolation facilities, and a policy that separates COVID-positive kids from their parents, though they are relaxing that measure a little bit now. Authorities have readied or prepared tens of thousands of new beds in more than 100 makeshift hospitals as part of a policy of isolating every person who tests positive for the virus, whether or not they show any symptoms. The situation now also having an effect on the global supply chain. The economic strain is also up as drivers are being held up from taking goods to major shipping ports, disrupting global supply chains. City health official Wu Qianyu said during a Sunday press conference the city would not relax in the slightest. Major online delivery platforms said they would bolster food stocks and draft thousands of drivers to strengthen the supply of basic goods.
President Duterte and Chinese President Xi Jinping have expressed hope for a peaceful settlement of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, Malacanang said. This was after Duterte and Xi in a telesummit admitted that they were deeply concerned about the conflict, the office of the president said in a press statement issued late Friday night. Duterte and Xi held a virtual meeting in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and amid their worry over a potential spillover of the war into Asia, including the Philippines and China. On March 31, Duterte maintained his neutral stance on the Russia-Ukraine crisis, but warned that China would not sit idly in the event Moscow resorts to nuclear war. The Philippines is one of the countries that voted in favor of a resolution removing Russia from the United Nations Human Rights Council. It has also expressed readiness to accept Ukrainian refugees amid the ongoing war and humanitarian crisis in the European state. The Russian offensive, launched on February 24, has displaced more than 10 million people based on data from the UN. About 4.2 million of the displaced individuals have fled Ukraine's borders.
Meanwhile, UNICEF Emergency Programs Director Manuel Fontaine said the war in Ukraine is a nightmare for its children, saying nearly half of the children may be at risk of not having enough food. Let's listen in.
I actually just returned from a mission to Ukraine, and I must say in my 31 years as a humanitarian, I've rarely seen so much damage caused in so little time. Friday's attack on Kramatorsk train station was particularly horrifying. The station has been a critical route for thousands of families fleeing Donetsk Oblast, an area that has seen some of the war's worst violence and destruction. When the station was attacked, it was filled with families desperate to escape the mounting violence. I note the tragic irony that our teams were actually offloading life-saving humanitarian supplies only a kilometer away when so many lives were taken away by this needless act of violence. Inside Ukraine, children and families and communities are under attack. Of the 3.2 million children estimated to have remained in their homes, nearly half may be at risk of not having enough food. Attacks on water system infrastructure and power outages have left an estimated 1.4 million people without access to water in Ukraine. Another 4.6 million people have only limited access. The situation is even worse in cities like Mariupol and Kherson, where children and their families have now gone weeks without running water and sanitation services, a regular supply of food and medical care. They are sheltering in their homes and underground, waiting for the bombs and violence to stop. As of yesterday, the High Commissioner for Human Rights Office has verified 142 children killed and 229 children injured. We know these numbers are likely much higher, and many of them were caused by crossfire or the use of explosive weapons in populated areas. I actually met one of those children in an intensive care unit in the hospital ward of Zaporizhia. Vlad, who is a 4-year-old, was shot twice in the stomach as he was escaping with his family from a contested area. Although still unconscious, Vlad is expected to live, unlike so many others.
President Joe Biden and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a candid exchange of views on the Ukraine crisis at a virtual summit Monday, but the United States appeared to have made little progress in wooing India away from its neutral stance on Russia's invasion.
Mr. Prime Minister, our continued consultation and dialogue are key to ensuring the U.S.-India relationship continues to grow deeper and stronger, delivering our people and our global good that we all are seeking to manage, particularly in your part of the world.
इस पूरे घटनाक्रम के दौरान मैंने यूक्रेन और रूस दोनों के राष्ट्रपतियों से कई बार फोन पर बातचीत की। मैंने न सिर्फ शांति की अपील की, बल्कि मैंने राष्ट्रपति पुतिन को यूक्रेन के राष्ट्रपति के साथ सीधी बातचीत का सुझाव भी रखा।
Modi has tried to walk a tightrope between maintaining relations with the West and avoiding alienating Russia, but has raised concerns in Washington by continuing to buy Russian oil. In his talks with Biden, he merely said the situation was very worrying and recalled his support for talks between Russia and Ukraine, which Washington views with skepticism. Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar showed a hint of annoyance when he told reporters asking about Biden's push for India to cut energy imports from Russia that probably our total purchases for the month would be less than what Europe does in an afternoon.
In our judgment, it is important that all countries, especially those with leverage, press Putin to end the war. And it's also important that democracies stand together and speak with one voice to defend the values that we share. And we do share profoundly the values of freedom, openness, independence, sovereignty, and those values need to apply everywhere.
If you are looking at energy purchases from Russia, I would suggest that your attention should be focused on Europe, which probably we do buy some energy which is necessary for our energy security. But I suspect, looking at the figures, probably our total purchases for the month would be less than what Europe does in an afternoon.
The result of the vote is as follows. In favor, 93, against, 24, abstentions, 58. Draft resolution.
New Delhi abstained when the UN General Assembly voted last week to suspend Russia from its seat on the 47-member Human Rights Council over allegations that Russian soldiers in Ukraine engaged in war crimes. The United States has already warned that any country that actively helps Russia to circumvent international sanctions will suffer consequences.
Meanwhile, Russian troops were aiming to take control of the city of Mariupol on Tuesday, part of an anticipated massive onslaught across eastern Ukraine as defending forces tried desperately to hold them back. Russia is believed to be trying to connect occupied Crimea with Moscow-backed separatist territories, Donetsk and Lugansk in Donbass, and has laid siege to the strategically located city, once home to more than 400,000 people. Ukrainian forces were surrounded and blocked, tweeted Milo Botolyak, an official from President Volodymyr Zelensky's office. But on Monday, the Ukrainian army insisted that the defense of Mariupol continues. The connection with the units of the defense forces that heroically hold the city is stable and maintained, the land forces of Ukraine wrote on its telegram. And during a video address to the South Korean parliament, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that he believes tens of thousands of people in Mariupol have already been killed, as he asked lawmakers to provide military assistance. He was speaking to the parliament in South Korea. Let's listen in.
Маріуполь зруйнований. Там десятки тисяч загиблих. Але навіть попри це, росіяни не зупиняють наступальну операцію. Вони хочуть зробити так, щоб Маріуполь був показово знищеним містом. Немає і не може бути надії, що Росія просто сама по собі зупиниться. Немає і не може бути надії, що розум переможе і російське керівництво просто відмовиться від продовження цієї війни. Росію можна тільки змусити це зробити.
Now, Zelensky also said South Korea could help his country's fight against Russia by providing military equipment from aeroplanes to tanks. If Ukraine, he said, receives such weapons, not only will they save the lives of ordinary people, but it will be a chance to save Ukraine. South Korea has given Ukraine some 1 billion won, around $800,000 of non-lethal military equipment, such as bulletproof helmets, medical kit, according to Seoul's defense ministry. The Korean War ended in a ceasefire and not a peace treaty, and the peninsula remains in a technical state of war. And Seoul is a close security ally of Washington as well, and the U.S. stations around 28,500 troops in South Korea to help defend the country against the nuclear-armed North, which invaded in 1950. But it turned down a recent Ukrainian request for anti-aircraft weaponry, saying that providing such weapons on the scale requested would impact South Korea's own military readiness posture. And the news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. We'll be right back.
Mr. Bawal, ang galing mo namang sumayaw. Pwedeng pa-copy ng dance steps mo? Oo naman, Mr. Pwede. Mr. Bawal, ang ganda rin ng forma mo. Pwedeng pa-copy ng forma mo? Oo ba? Mr. Bawal, pakopya naman sagot mo.
Yan ang hindi pwede. Ang pagsilip sa sagot ng iba, lalong-lalong na sa butuan. Oy, bawal yan!
Ayon sa Omnibus Election Code, ang pagtatangkang silipin at alamin ang boto ng iba ay isang election offense.
Mr. Pwede? Please report to the principal's office.
Ako si Mr. Bawal, nagpapaalala sa inyo na ang pagsilip sa boto ng ibang botante. Uy, bawal yan!
A public service message of Net25 for Mata ng Halalan 2022. Matatag, matapang, matapat.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. ilalabas natin ang angking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Welcome back. Overseas voting in Thailand has now begun or commenced. The period for overseas voting in Thailand is for 30 continuous calendar days. Let's hear more from Ian Celada, who is in Phuket, Thailand. Ian.
A consular outreach mission was conducted in Phuket, in which our kababayan also casted their votes as overseas absentee voting kicked off on April 9, 2022. Here's some of their reactions.
Satisfied na gampanan ko yung role bilang isang Pilipino na nagboto ko yung aking kursunada. Siyempre, para din sa ating bansa, mabigay natin yung sino yung nararapat.
Inaasahan ko sa susunod na administrasyon ay magiging mas malinis, mabuti at maayos ang kanilang pamamahala. At inaasahan ko na kung ano yung mga magagandang bagay na nagawa ni Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte, kanilang ipagpapatuloy at masihigitan pa.
We are looking forward to the next administration to change the life of OFWs for the better. So I hope they can have more programs that OFW can benefit, and then also internally sa Pilipinas they should uplift the life of Filipino people, especially the less privileged one. So yeah, I hope they have more programs like that and make Philippines like a Singapore or Thailand or even better than that.
Reporting from Phuket, Thailand, I am Ian Celada. We'll live in interesting times. Back to you at the studio.
Meanwhile, thousands of people took to the streets in Sri Lankan capital to protest against President Gotabaya Rajapaksa with public anger at a favored speech over the country's crippling economic crisis. Let's listen in.
This is against the prevailing political system in Sri Lanka. So people are fighting because they have been fed up of this system for a long time, not just a year or two. Like we have been fed up for a very long time. And now it's the time for us to get together and just shout out to act against this corrupted system. So this is against the prevailing political corruption here in Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka's 22 million residents have seen weeks of power blackouts and severe shortages of food, fuel, and even life-saving medicine in the country's worst downturn since independence in 1948. Protesters have rallied daily since Saturday against the president, Rajapaksa, Mahinda's younger brother, in Colombo and across the island nation, chanting "Gota, go home" and calling for his government's removal. While the coronavirus spurred restrictions and stoppages have torpedoed Sri Lanka's vital tourism-driven economy, experts are saying the crisis was exacerbated by the government mismanagement, years of accumulated borrowing, and ill-advised tax cuts. The government is preparing for bailout negotiations with the International Monetary Fund this week, with Finance Ministry officials saying that sovereign bondholders and other creditors may have to take a haircut. Sri Lanka expects $3 billion from the IMF to support the island's balance of payments in the next 3 years. In his first address since the crisis, Mahinda, the patriarch of the powerful Rajapaksa family, omnipresent in Sri Lanka's politics for 2 decades, said he needed more time to pull the nation out of the deep end.
President Rodrigo Roa Duterte on Monday said he is willing to face Senator Richard Gordon in a public debate if the latter would challenge him. In a pre-recorded talk to the people, Duterte called Gordon a thief, anew for his alleged involvement in corruption in the Philippine Red Cross, which the senator chairs. He also mocked Gordon for supposedly stuttering while talking.
But if you want to engage me in a debate in public, okay. I will. I have your case number, Mr. Gordon. At nakita ko yung nagsalita ka. Nagsasalita siya sa stage. Kaya kung magpunta kayo sa mga rally nandyan si Gordon, magdala kayo ng payong. It's circulating around. Nag-i-speech siya, tapos yung kumukuha ng video, nandito talaga sa harap niya sa baba. At makita mo yung laway, parang umuulan. Makikita mo talaga yung... Pero get hold of that clip sa video.
In an episode of the President's Chat Room aired on Sunday, Duterte encouraged senatorial aspirant and former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque to replace Gordon in the Senate. Duterte has repeatedly assailed Gordon for carrying out probes into alleged irregularities in the government's procurement of COVID-19 supplies at the height of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. He said Gordon and other senators interrogated his cabinet officials for hours, wasting time that should otherwise have been used at work. Duterte has long insisted that the government's purchase of medical supplies from Pharmaceutical Corp is in accordance with Republic Act 11469 or the Bayanihan to Hilas 1 Act or Bayanihan 1. He added that Congress was aware of the provision in Bayanihan 1 that authorizes the government to buy emergency supplies without the need to comply with procurement laws. A billionaire Thai opposition figure was indicted and granted bail Monday after being charged with violating the country's tough royal defamation laws in the highest profile Lise Majest case yet. Thanathorn Juang Brung Kin was charged last year after the posted a video in which he questioned whether Thailand was leaning too heavily on bioscience, closely linked to the Thai royal family for its vaccination campaign. The 43-year-old, who founded the now banned and hugely popular anti-establishment Future Forward Party, also faces charges relating to computer crimes. On Monday, a judge ruled that the court would indict Thanathorn for Lise Majest, which can carry a sentence of 15 years imprisonment per charge, and granted bail to the billionaire with a 90,000 baht or $2,600 guarantee. Speaking outside the court, Thanathorn said he believed the case was politically motivated and vowed to contest the charges. Indonesian police deployed tear gas and water cannon against thousands of students protesting Monday against extending the presidential term limit after rumors swirled for weeks about a potential change to the country's constitution. The Southeast Asian country's next election is in 2024, and President Joko Widodo would not be eligible to run as Indonesia places a two-term limit on its leader. But senior ministers and several political parties last month suggested the election should be delayed and the constitution amended to allow presidents to serve more than 2 terms. Monday saw about 2,000 university students gather in front of the House of Representatives building. Indonesia has seen similar rallies sprout across the country in the last week. Jakarta Police Chief Fadil Imran said those tactics were used after a group of protesters assaulted Ade Armando, an academic widely seen to be pro-Widodo. Armando had suffered injuries on his head after being trampled by angry protesters, police said. Imran said 6 officers were also attacked and injured while attempting to evacuate the academic. The debate on delaying the election and extending the presidential term has gathered steam since March, despite Widodo himself rebuking the suggestions multiple times. On Sunday, he reiterated that it was speculation.
In other news, a New York jury convicted a former Goldman Sachs banker for his role in propagating a massive bribery and money laundering scheme involving a state-owned Malaysian investment fund. The jury found Roger Ng, a managing director at Goldman from 2005 to 2014, guilty on all 3 counts connected to the massive 1MDB bribery scheme, which involved the embezzlement of billions of dollars of funds originally raised by investment bank. What the 1MDB fund was set up to promote the Malaysian economy, but it was spectacularly looted in a scandal that roiled the country's politics and marred Goldman's reputation. Ng and his co-conspirators paid more than $1 billion in bribes to government officials to secure 3 bond large transactions for Goldman with 1MDB, according to the U.S. Justice Department. The conspirators laundered billions of dollars in funds from 1MDB, including some of the funds from the Goldman transactions. Some of the money went to luxury items, such as $51 million to a Jean-Michel Basquiat painting and millions of dollars in Hermes handbags, according to the Justice Department.
Morning, Doc.
And we have more news for you. Please stay tuned.
Lakuteng, sigurado ako, maraming tao sa araw ng botohan.
Naku, sinabi mo pa, pila dito, pila doon. Abay, napakaraming tao.
Alam niyo ba, sa araw ng botohan, bukas na ang presinto ng alas 6 ng umaga.
Bukas na ang presinto ng alas 6 ng umaga?
Wow! Parang choir! Mula alas 6 ng umaga hanggang alas 5 ng hapon.
Eto nga, ang hirap pa niyan, yung hanapan ng presinto.
Kaya nga sa araw ng botohan, mas makabubuting dumating ng maaga sa presinto para iwas sa siksikan at sa dami ng tao. Naku! Iwas din sa init.
Tama! Agahan natin ang pagboto.
Korek ka dyan, Mare. Teka lang, nagtitinda ka ng balot? Kaya ang aga pa.
Dahil the early bird catches... Wala palang bird. Balot! Balot! The early balot catches... Hindi naman kayo worm. Bili na lang po kayo. Para sa karagdagang kaalaman, makipag-ugnayan lang sa pinakamalapit na barangay o bisitahin ang COMELEC website.
A public service message of Net25 for Mata ng Halalan 2022. Matatag, matapang, matapat.
Welcome back. Oil companies announced that they will slash fuel prices starting Tuesday morning, with the oil price rollback now on its 2nd week. In separate advisories, Caltex, Clean Fuel, Jetty, Petrogas, PTT Philippines, Sea Oil, and Shell said they will decrease diesel prices by 35 peso per liter and 1 peso per liter on gasoline. Caltex, Sea Oil, and Shell will also cut kerosene prices by 3 pesos per liter. Since the start of the year, oil prices have remained elevated, with the global benchmark exceeding the 100 USD per barrel mark, mainly due to geopolitical tensions from the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Oil industry experts said the decline in global oil prices was backed by the announcement of International Energy Agency's, or IEA, member nations to release 60 million barrels in the next 6 months, and the continued pandemic-related lockdowns in China. With the price rollbacks in the local market last week, year-to-date net increase for diesel prices stood at 26 pesos per liter, 16 pesos per liter for gasoline, and 24.1 pesos per liter for kerosene.
And BTS took over the Vegas Strip, and Anna Kui was able to talk to some of the fans there to get some reactions. Anna?
Whether you're a regular BTS fan, ARMY, or not, it's hard not to get caught up in the excitement happening here in Las Vegas since the K-pop superstars arrived in town. Even days before their Grammys live performance, BTS, also known as the Bangtan Boys, together with their ARMY, seem to have taken over the city. Marquees and properties at the famous Las Vegas Strip were lit purple the night before their first out of 4 sold-out Permission to Dance concert, with welcoming signage for the South Korean sensation group and its fan club ARMY. Fans have also been gathering at the Fountains of Bellagio water show while they feature the group's hit songs Butter and Dynamite. Now, what else is happening here in town? To provide the ARMY with the full-on BTS experience, you can see here at Area 15 an immersive art and entertainment venue that is hosting a free pop-up space filled with exclusive BTS merchandise and curated installations. We caught up with some ARMY members who talked about their experience being here in Las Vegas, enjoying the BTS concert.
And it was like, oh my gosh, they're so amazing, they're so beautiful, they're just great human beings.
Every show is different.
And it's always different, and it's just awestruck.
And being part of what Las Vegas has welcomed everybody, that's been kind of fun.
Right.
The BTS is awesome. Awesome. It's beautiful. It's awesome.
BTS just finished the first 2 of their 4 sold-out events at Allegiant Stadium this past weekend, and their fans are counting the days before they see them again on April 15 and 16. So, you went to the concert this past weekend?
Yes, I did. I went twice.
Wow, and then you're planning to go again this weekend?
I sure am. My love for them is unconditional.
Anna Kui, ASEAN in Focus, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Thanks, Anna. And thank you, Eliana, for keeping me company here on ASEAN in Focus.
Thank you, Alma, and that's the latest news in the ASEAN region. Thank you for joining us here in ASEAN in Focus. I'm Eliana Faith Sebastian from EBC Vietnam Bureau, and believe in interesting times.
Thank you, Eliana, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back tomorrow. Same time, same place. Here on ASEAN in Focus, saying the news because we live in interesting times.
Ang susunod na programa ay rated PG. Ito ay nangangailangan ng patnubay at gabay ng magulang para sa mga batang manonood.
Magandang araw po mga kababayan. Welcome pong muli sa programang ito.